If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 7 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. This time-stamped email proves that this prediction that Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025 has been known since November 9th. We can see here the timestamp November 9th, 2024. On November 8th, 2024, we received the relevant prophetic signs related to Paul Simon. And as I wrote right here, God was pointing to November 8th ahead of time because Simon's death will point to Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. And this is the reason why Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. In short, the date 8:1 and 11:8 hint at Revelation 8:1 in the Bible, which describes a period of silence that was observed in heaven. Paul Simon's first hit was Sound of Silence. As I wrote right here, it is exactly 38 weeks between November 8th and August 1st, 2025, and Paul Simon is predicted to die at the age of 83, for which 38 weeks hints at. A dirty bomb is a conventional explosive that uses radioactive material. I am predicting that 3 dirty bombs will explode in New York City, in Times Square, Penn Station, and Grand Central Station. There will then be a massive evacuation from Manhattan Island. I am predicting that these 3 dirty bombs will explode on either August 30th or September 4th. I am also predicting that a dirty bomb will explode in the port of Los Angeles on September 4th. I am predicting that Tehran, Iran, will be nuked by the US or possibly Israel on September 7th, 2025. This will obviously be in response to the dirty bombs that are predicted to explode in New York City. I am predicting that Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom will die in a plane crash in St. Louis as they are traveling from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles in Busch Stadium in St. Louis on August 2nd, 2028. This will be during the predicted presidential campaign of Gavin Newsom. As a result of Gavin Newsom's death, Michelle Obama will become the Democrat Party's presidential nomination. Michelle Obama will, quote unquote, win the election over J.D. Vance on November 7th, 2028, and will become the president on January 20th, 2029. Donald Trump is predicted to run as J.D. Vance's vice president. This scheme to overcome the 22nd Amendment will backfire and inspire Michelle Obama and Barack Obama to run on the ticket with Barack Obama as Michelle Obama's vice president. She will then step down and Barack Obama will become the president again. It is predicted that there will be a massive Mary apparition on the beach in Rio, Brazil on April 24th, 2029. It is now recognized that there will be 2 massive Mary apparitions on the beach in Rio. The first of the 2 is predicted to be on March 22nd, 2029. These predicted Mary apparitions will not be secretive. They will be mainstream, worldwide news. Like all Mary apparitions in history, including at Lourdes, Guadalupe, and Fatima, this Mary apparition will be a demon pretending to be Mary. It is predicted that on April 26th, 2029, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to the 5th trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens. The demons pretending to be aliens will claim to be here to help us with our nuclear weapons. It is predicted that Pope Francis will be resurrected from the grave on April 26th, 2029. And it is possible that on this day, Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist and 5G frequencies. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. The resurrection rapture event will occur on Pentecost on May 27th, 2029. On September 11th, 2029, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth in the Indian Ocean. The greatest seismic effect of this will be felt on the other side of the globe, which is North America, and this will trigger an eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the east coast. The asteroid will also trigger a mega landslide on Hawaii Island that will trigger a mega tsunami that will hit the west coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be at the end of 2031. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Paul Simon is symbolism for the bridge that demons will cross over that is symbolized in Revelation 9:11. Simon is predicted to die 11 months and 19 days, which hints at Revelation 9:11, after the death of Wally Amos of Famous Amos Cookies at the age of 88. In the Bible, there is a famous prophet named Amos, and Amos chapter 8 speaks of a basket of summer fruit. Paul Simon is predicted to die in the middle of summer. It was Wally Amos who first signed Simon and Garfunkel. Yes, the guy, Famous Amos Cookies guy, before he was Famous Amos Cookies, he worked for the agency that signed Simon and Garfunkel. He was the guy. And Amos lured them in with a gift of cookies. That's how he got started in cookies, because he would lure in artists and make contracts by giving them cookies to make him stand out from the others that were competing for them. Really, really brilliant strategy too, because who doesn't love cookies? But so that's why the death of this Wally Amos, which hints at the prophet in the Bible, connects to the death of Paul Simon, because Wally Amos, signed Simon and Garfunkel. And that's why he died at the age of 88, because it points to chapter 8 of the book of Amos, which begins with a basket of summer fruit. And by the way, the beginning of this chapter about a basket of summer fruit is also, in a way, alluding to the beginning of Revelation 8:1 in the New Testament with the sound of silence. I didn't think of that until just now. No kidding. No kidding. God used this death of Amos, famous Amos, at the age of 88 to point to this basket of summer fruit. But Amos signed Paul Simon, and that's why Paul Simon connects his predicted death connects with the death of Amos. And 8/1, August 1st, is the timing of the middle of the summer for a basket of summer fruit. Wow. Okay, now, Simon is also known for being from New York City and performing on Saturday Night Live in New York City after 9/11. He also performed at the 10th anniversary tribute at the 9/11 memorial. This is also why his death will be 11 months and 19 days after the death of famous Amos at the age of 88. Well, first of all, famous Amos signed Simon and Garfunkel in New York City, but in the events of 9/11 is the story of the heroes of the 88th floor. The Tribute in Lights art installation that commemorated the Twin Towers was made up of 88 searchlights. And through the 9/11 events, which I explained in many other videos, God pointed to George Washington. And according to Wikipedia, there are 88 places in America named Washington. Simon will die on the date 8/1 because his death will point to the first verse of the 8th chapter of Revelation. 8/1, again, because Simon's big first hit was Sound of Silence, and in Revelation 8:1, the period of silence is observed in heaven. 8/1 is the middle of summer. Wally Amos, famous Amos Cookies, who was the first to sign Simon and Garfunkel. I just realized this is a double entendre here. God is playing on this. The signing of Paul Simon and Garfunkel is a prophetic sign. So it's a literal signing. It's a literal sign. So Wally Amos was the first to sign Simon and Garfunkel to a record label, and he died at the age of 88 because his death pointed to the first verse of the 8th chapter of Amos. Okay, so again, Simon will die on the date 8/1 because it'll point to the first verse of Revelation chapter 8. Wally Amos, who signed Paul Simon and Garfunkel, died at the age of 88 because it points to the first verse of the 8th chapter of Amos, which regards a basket of summer fruit. And the date that Paul Simon will die is in the middle of summer, when there are baskets of summer fruit. Simon will die on 8/1 because the verse of the 8th chapter of Revelation regards a period because of Revelation 8:1. So let me repeat that. Simon will die on 8/1 because the first verse of the 8th chapter of Revelation regards a period of silence that was observed in heaven, Paul Simon's song, Sound of Silence. The singer-songwriter, Paul Simon, will die at the age of 83 because it will point to Amos 8:3. So they're cross-referencing each other here, right? Paul Simon will die on 8/1 because of the first verse in Revelation 8:1. Wally Amos died at 88 because of the first verse in Amos 1. That's a basket of summer fruit that points to Paul Simon. And Wally Amos signed Paul Simon. But the age at which Paul Simon will die points back to the book of Amos, which is Amos 8:3, because Paul Simon is predicted to die at the age of 83, and this will point to Amos 8:3. So through all this roundabout, God is pointing to Amos 8:3. This is getting really, really deep, by the way. This is getting so spiritually deep now. This is like one of the highlights of this entire endeavor of 7 years now of watching God's signs. I cannot describe it in words, how amazing what I'm about to explain is. But I'm getting there here. You can see through all these connections here, the back and forth, we've got God pointing to Amos 8:3, which is this, the songs, which is why Paul Simon, who was signed by Wally Amos, as in Amos 8:3, the songs of the temple shall become wailings in that day, declares the Lord God. So many dead bodies, exclamation mark. This is in quotes. It's God speaking. They are thrown everywhere, exclamation mark. Silence, exclamation mark. Wow. This is Paul Simon here. The singer-songwriter, The Sound of Silence, Amos 8:3. Paul Simon will die at 83. Simon was signed by Amos, as in Amos 8:3. He'll die on 8:1, as in Sound of Silence, Revelation 8:1. Okay? I mean, what can I say here? God is seriously communicating something here. The death of Paul Simon is a massive, massive warning of the coming many dead bodies. And a judgment that's coming in the 7 trumpets that follow Revelation 8:1, which is about the sound of silence. The last verses of Sound of Silence. Now, so after discovering that, it occurred to me to look at the lyrics of Sound of Silence again, and it gets even deeper. The song Sound of Silence is a prophecy. It's like the book of Amos, if you will. God has used this Sound of Silence song to tie into this prophetic story that I'm telling. The last verses of Sound of Silence. And the sign said, the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls, and whispered in the sounds of silence. So this use of prophets and writing, this is more confirmation that all of this is for the purpose of pointing to Amos 8:3. And this warning that God is giving to ancient Israel, the only other of the 2 nations in history, besides America, that were founded on a relationship with God and the Bible, with the Pilgrims. Paul Simon equals America. He has a big hit named America. He is the quintessential baby boomer American singer and songwriter. So God has used Paul Simon as a prophet. Now, incidentally, Paul Simon has said in interviews that there are a few of his songs that he didn't actually write. And as he puts it, to paraphrase, because I forget his exact words, but he is or was somewhat of a conduit, and the songs just flowed through him. In other words, what he is saying is he's not really taking credit for the songs. A strange thing to say. But given what we are talking about here, it makes a lot of sense. There's more to this, by the way, because the subway halls is a reference to New York City. And it is predicted that in this same month that Paul Simon will die will be the disaster in the subway stations in New York City, which I'll explain in a second. But this is just amazing. Again, we have the sound of silence. And again, Revelation 8:1, the sound of silence. Prophets, Amos. Wally Amos died at 88, who signed Paul Simon, to point to the book of Amos, the first verse, the basket of summer fruit. Paul Simon will die in the middle of summer on the day 8:1. And he'll die at 83, which is relevant just like the age at which Wally Amos died is relevant. In 83 hints at Amos 8:3, which speaks of songs and silence, which is echoed in Paul Simon's song, Sound of Silence, when the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls because of what is coming and whispered in the sound of silence. More lyrics here from the Sound of Silence. It occurred to me there's even more. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more. Now I forgot to put this in bold and italics because this is amazing. This 10,000 people, maybe more, is a reference to so many dead bodies in Amos 8:3. So many dead bodies. They are thrown everywhere. 10,000 people, maybe more. People talking without speaking. People hearing without listening. This seems to me to be a reference to perhaps people in the afterlife, in hell, when they'll be talking and speaking and hearing and listening, but no one's understanding each other after they've died. So many dead bodies thrown everywhere. 10,000 people, maybe more. People writing songs, as in Paul Simon, as in songs in Amos 8:3. The songs shall become wailing in that day. In that day when many people die, 10,000 people or maybe more, and they're not hearing or speaking with each other, people are writing songs that voices never share. No one dared. It could be also a reference to the people that are still remaining alive after these events of the seven trumpets, or during that time, because they know this is judgment from God, or at least they unconsciously or intuitively suspect. It's. I don't want to get off onto a tangent here, but everyone knows there's a God. It's a lie that people, when they say that there's no God, atheists are lying to themselves. They know there's a God, and that'll come out when they die. And they'll also confide, if you really get to speak with them, they will confide that they don't really believe that there's no God. But anyway, no one dared disturb the sound of silence. You could imagine that people are so in shock with what's going to happen that's described in the seven trumpets that they wouldn't even dare to speak out. Or they'd just be in shock. Okay, yeah, here I've referenced it again here. The songs, okay? So many dead bodies, they are thrown everywhere. That's 10,000 people, maybe more. silence. Sound of silence. Which is again why Paul Simon will die on 8:1, because of Revelation 8:1 and the observed silence in heaven. That is a parallel with the silence in the book of Amos, chapter 8. And therefore, Paul Simon's death will be a massive, massive warning of the trumpet judgments in Revelation chapter 8 that are now set to begin. Because the trumpet judgments follow the sound of silence. The fulfillment of these 7 trumpets will follow the death of the composer of Sound of Silence. So there's more. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made. This is completely biblical, by the way. Because the judgments are coming because of people's worship of false gods. And people today don't make idols out of wood and then worship them like they did back in biblical times. It's a metaphor. People today worship all kinds of false gods. Whether it be their careers, money, success, their fashion, anything that puts anything ahead of God is a false god. As God says in the beginning, in the 10 Commandments, he is a jealous God. And so the thing that God hates most is, well, false religion, false worship, religious worship. But today people worship all kinds of things, including, by the way, themselves. And that's even encoded into a particular religion, which is Eastern religion, which is deception from Satan, in which people claim that God is the universe itself and they are God, and they just need to remember that they are God and become enlightened through supposed spiritual evolution, through spiritual practices such as yoga and meditation, etc. I mean, that's really become, in a way, the dominant religion in the West and has replaced Christianity, because most people aren't atheists. Most people actually in the West have a worldview in which pretty much is what I just described. God being an impersonal energy instead of a personal being who is holy, which is the Hebrew word that means separate from the creation. He isn't the creation itself. The idea that God is the creation itself is called pantheism, and the idea that God is separate from the creation and created the creation is called monotheism, and both can't be true. The world is either round or flat. It can't be both. The foundation of philosophy of logic 101 is A can't equal not A. So the people that are pantheists, they don't really think clearly, which is why they are pantheists in the first place. They don't think, but they will say something like, well, all religions fit into my religion or my worldview. That's the arrogance of the Hindu Eastern worldview, is supposedly all of the world's religions fit under its umbrella. And they will even have the nerve to tell someone who's a Christian that they're a Christian because they have their false idea of who Christ is and on and on. It has nothing to do with the Bible, but they have their own ideas and they think it's, whatever. I'm going off onto a tangent here, but it's necessary to say, because there are so many people that are caught up in that worldview, that lie, including many people that call themselves quote unquote Christians. There's actually a new religion today that's been spawned in the last few years, which is made up of mostly baby boomers, women who have combined New Age, Hindu, Eastern religion ideas with Christianity. It's like this mix. They're like half Christian, half Hindu. But it's still deception. They're still on their way to hell. They're not Christian. They never, for example, read the Bible, or rarely, but if they do, they reinterpret it from its clear meaning. Anyway, enough of that. So, and the people bowed and prayed to the neon gods they made. And the sign flashed out its warning in the words that it was forming. And the sign said, "The words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls, and whispered in the sounds of silence." So I wanted to add this part here because we are talking about a sign and it flashing out a warning. This is the lyrics of Sound of Silence, which is what I'm saying is that God is using this song and Paul Simon as a prophetic sign to flash out a warning. And this warning is being given to the world through this video. Do you appreciate that? If you are a Christian, please know it is your responsibility to never stop sharing this video. And if you do, share another video on this channel, if that's the case. But to never stop sharing this channel. And I literally mean that. You need to work. You need to use your bags of gold. And the one servant, and Jesus is speaking to Christians in Matthew 25, that did nothing with their bag of gold was banished to hell. Once saved, always saved is not true. Read the words to the prophet Ezekiel in chapter 3 and 33, and to what happens to the watchmen or the prophets that do nothing with the warning. The warning is being given out through this video and this prediction. You need to share it, and don't only share it into the comments sections of channels you always frequently visit and preach to the choir. Go to places you never go. Go to the sites of the enemy. This is a prophetic sign. The Sound of Silence is a sign. It contains the word sign and flashing out a warning. The death of Paul Simon will be a warning, and this will be proven to be true because of this prediction. This is the purpose of this prediction that is from God, that is only being explained in this channel, because God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is only being explained on this channel. So please share this video. The sign metaphor in Simon's Sound of Silence lyrics hints at a prophetic sign. His death will be a prophetic sign, as will be the dirty bomb explosions that are predicted to occur within the Penn Station and Grand Central Station subway walls. As in, the words of the prophets were written on the subway walls, which is predicted to occur later in the month, the same month that Paul Simon is predicted to die, August 30th, which, by the way, is why Paul Simon is predicted to die at the age 83. It hints at the date 8:30. If the dirty bombs don't explode on 8:30, it will be September 4th. Afterward, after the dirty bomb explosions in the subway walls, or between the subway walls, there will be an evacuation and a sound of silence in New York City. Picture that. People have evacuated because of the fallout of the dirty material, the radioactive material and the dirty bombs there will actually be a sound of silence in the normally very busy Penn Station and Grand Central stations. Wow. These signs will be a warning of the upcoming loss of life described by the prophet Amos in chapter 8. That will be the result of the events that are described in Revelation chapter 8. Amos is describing the massive death in chapter 8, and that will be the result of the events described in Revelation chapter 8. Which is why Wally Amos died at the age of 88. These two chapter 8s are connected to each other. And the dirty bombs will not incur a massive loss of life. They will be a warning, a further warning of the upcoming events of Revelation chapter 8. Which is why I believe there will either be a prophetic sign on the day 8:30 or the sign will be the dirty bombs. Because it will point to Amos 8:3. And the so many dead bodies thrown everywhere. A third of the world's population is predicted to die in the upcoming 6 years, according to Bible prophecy. Well, 6.25 years, 6 years. The Lord's return is on the Day of Atonement in 2031. Paul Simon is predicted to die exactly 115 weeks after the release of the album 7 Psalms on May 19th, 2023, which was 4 years, 4 months, and 4 days after Simon had his prophetic dream, in which he says he was instructed to produce the album and name it 7 Psalms. The date of his dream was January 15th, 2019. We know this because he talks about this dream in the interviews that he gives. And if they are at his studio in Texas when they have the interview, he shows them the framed piece of paper on the wall on which he wrote after his dream, which is dated January 15th. This is one of the most amazing things I have ever learned through the revelations in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. This 115 weeks hints at the date 115. Because again, I'll just repeat that. If you could picture it in your mind without a diagram. Paul Simon is predicted to die 115 weeks exactly after the release of the album. Paul Simon is equal to the number 4 in God's signs. The album was released 4 years, 4 months, and 4 days after the dream that instructed to make the album. And the dream was on the date 115, which hints at 115. Or rather, the other way around. 115 hints at the date 115. And this is because it points to Amos chapter 1, which has 15 verses. What's with Amos chapter 1? The phrase, quote, for 3 transgressions and for 4, unquote. I should say for 4, which is this number that God has been using so much regarding the signs with Paul Simon. This phrase, for 3 transgressions and for 4, is repeated in this first chapter of Amos. Only now has it become known the full reason why God uses the number 4 with Paul Simon. It isn't only for the door symbolism and the bridge symbolism, like I've explained. It's for this reason here. Because Paul Simon is a massive, massive warning of judgment through his signs, through his songs, I should say. I mean, it's amazing how all of these signs flow together in a big picture that parallels Bible prophecy. Okay, and ultimately we are pointing to the warning of judgment in Amos, in the book of Amos. Like I have explained already in chapter 8. But this book of Amos begins with the first chapter, and we have this symbolism that's being pointed to. And what is this? What does this phrase mean? Okay. Its meaning is that it is a Hebrew idiom signifying a fullness or completeness of sin, reaching a point where God's judgment is inevitable. It's not simply listing for transgressions, but rather using for to emphasize that the sins have gone beyond a tolerable limit, reaching a tipping point. This is the most stunning revelation. So the number 3 often represents completeness or a set standard in Hebrew thought. So that's why, and for 4, adding 4 to the 3 transgressions. So the chapter is there's for 3 transgressions and for 4 of Gaza, for 3 transgressions of Tyre, and for 4, for 3 transgressions of the Amorites, and for 4, or something, right? So we have the completeness of the sin with the 3 transgressions, and the 4 is just an idiom that is meaning that it's gone beyond the tolerable limit of the completeness of sin, and therefore requires a judgment. Okay? It's intolerable. It's reached a tipping point. So adding 4 signifies that the sins have exceeded the set standard, reaching a point where God's patience is exhausted. This is the case with America. Paul Simon's big hit, America, is symbolism for this purpose. God is exhausted and has run out of patience. The completeness of sin is in, it's now exceeded. Judgment and destruction must now come. This phrase is a literary device used by Amos to highlight the accumulated nature of sin and the certainty of divine judgment. Okay, it's the accumulated sin, completeness of it, and the certainty of the impending divine judgment. That's what the death of Paul Simon will signify. It is so profound. Paul Simon will signify it's done. The sins have exceeded the tolerable limit. The judgment destruction is now certain. Simon's death will make that clear. The 7 trumpets will now commence. Not just for 4. It's not that God is listing 4 specific sins, but rather the cumulative effect of their transgressions has now reached a point where judgment is unavoidable. Simon's death will be a prophetic sign that signifies the cumulative effect of the transgressions of America has reached a point where judgment is unavoidable. This is what Paul Simon's death will signify. It is a massive prophetic sign. Paul Simon is a massive prophetic sign, and that's all Paul Simon as a prophetic sign comes together and is completed with his prophetic death, which is predicted to be on August 1st, And when this prediction comes to pass, it will prove the matter. And this prediction is only being explained on this channel. And so if you are a Christian, please be advised the words that God had for Ezekiel, the watchman, and for those who do nothing with the warning. When Jesus spoke to the servants in Matthew 25, he was speaking to Christians. And the one servant that did nothing with his bag of gold was banished to hell. Once saved, always saved isn't true. And you need to do work. A lot of evangelicals have a phobia regarding this because they believe if you think that you need to do work, you are supposedly not saved, which is wicked deception from Satan. Anyway, that's another subject. I won't get into doctrine here. But this is a massive bag of gold. This prophetic sign that is Paul Simon is only being explained on this channel. In other words, never ever stop sharing either this video or another video from this channel. And don't only share it in places you always go, in the comments sections, but comment in places you never go, the sites of the enemy. And change up the comment every time so the algorithm, the filters don't ban you from YouTube, okay? Because if you use the same phrase over and over and just copy paste, it's going to be like you're doing an SPAM. So just change your comment up slightly every time. But and to make that really simple, I would just have the simplest of, I don't know what to, put some extra letters. Put some gobbledygook in the comment to make it not the same every time. Okay, so, I'm doing my part here, getting you the video. It's your job to spread the news of this video far and wide. And if you would like the file that I hand out that has the information that people need right now, please email me. Now is not the time to be watching, a video on YouTube when you could be using that half an hour even to help potentially hundreds of people through handing out the flyer on a busy street corner or on car windshields in busy parking lots or in mailboxes. And you need to work. Luke chapter 21. Pray always that one is worthy of escaping the things that are coming. And don't believe the Calvinist translations. Go to the King James. It's those who are worthy of escaping. Not all quote-unquote Christians are going to be raptured. That's a lie. Anyway, time to end this video here. Sorry to get off the subject of this most important one of the most amazing revelations that have come through his signs. And by the way, it's now really certain that Paul Simon will die 115 weeks after the album was released. The album, again, is also, the theme of it is passing over into the afterlife. Okay? And again, as I explained in the other part of this email thread, the album was released. It connects with the release of the song Homeward Bound. Paul Simon will be homeward bound. And anyway, it all points to this, through the date of the dream as well, this Amos chapter 1, which has 15 verses. And that's for the purpose of using this idiom in Hebrew, which involves the number 4, to signify that the transgression's limit has been reached, and the sins have gone beyond the limit, and judgment is now unavoidable. That's the reason for the 4 related to the Paul Simon signs. Wow, I don't know what to say. Wow. This is why Simon and Garfunkel's first album was Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. That's the title of the first album that they made, Wednesday Morning, 3 a.m. Wednesday is the fourth day of the week. 3 a.m. and Wednesday morning hint at, quote, for 3 transgressions and for 4, unquote. You see that? The fourth day of the week is Wednesday, 3 a.m. This is hinting at the 3 and the 4 for 3 transgressions and for 4, as I've now explained, that God is using Paul Simon for, to point to this. The song Sound of Silence is on the album Wednesday Morning, 3 a.m. Simon is predicted to die on 8/1, August 1st, 8/1, because a period of silence is observed in heaven in Revelation 8:1. The period of silence in Revelation 8:1 is followed by the 7 trumpets of judgment. 8/1 will be exactly 7 months after 7 plus 7 deaths in the attack in New Orleans on a Wednesday morning at 3 a.m. because the attack occurred just after 3 a.m. The attacker, and also it was 7 injured in Las Vegas on the same day, using a Tesla that exploded. Tesla is also symbolism for lightning. And the attacker in the New Orleans attack used a Ford, as in 4, the number 4, hinting at 4, Ford Lightning truck. The name of the model of the Ford truck is Lightning. And he used this Ford Lightning truck to strike his victims. And the attack occurred on the same night that 4 iconic locations in America were struck by lightning. The news media, the mainstream media, commented on the coincidence of this happening, the 4 iconic locations in America being struck by lightning: the Empire State Building, the One World Tower, the Washington Monument, and the Capitol Building, all were struck by lightning on this night. In other words, at 3 a.m. on the 4th day of the week, 4 iconic locations were struck because it was a warning of judgment that began the new year in America, that pointed to for 3 transgressions and for 4. In other words, America's transgressions have been completed, and it's beyond the limit, which is the idiom and for 4. Revelation 8:1, the sound of, or the period of silence, is followed by lightning, and then the 7 trumpets. Also, the 2 iconic locations in New York City and Washington, a total of 4, pointed to 9/11 and the 4 airplanes that the terrorists hijacked. 2 of them were intended to be to strike Washington. The 4th one didn't make it, and that flight killed 44 people and struck the ground at a 40-degree angle and created a pit 40 acres big, 40 plus 40 miles outside of Pittsburgh, the city also known as the City of Bridges, as in bridge over troubled water, as explained elsewhere in this email thread. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived, and more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, A Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.